when you get it right, you get it right and you're, a rock star for a day or a week. But there's a lot of not getting it right along the way too. And I think that that is almost as important or more important than the getting it right is how you show up in those moments that things aren't going well. And, what is your fortitude? What is your character? How do you manage those things being somebody who just wants to go and move and, and go on, move on to the next thing.
Hi, I'm Tracy Lovejoy.
And I'm Shannon Lucas. We are the co-CEOs of Catalyst Constellations, which is dedicated to empowering catalysts to create bold, powerful change in the world.
This is our podcast, Move Fast, Break Shit, Burn Out, where we speak with Catalyst executives about ways to successfully lead transformation in large organizations.
And we're super excited today to have time with Renee Henze. Renee is the Chief Sustainability Officer at IFF, International Flavors and Fragrances, which I have to say has a great tagline where science and creativity meet. Also, you need to check out their website because they do everything. It was insane to go down that rabbit hole. Renee is also an adjunct professor of marketing at NYU School of Professional Studies, where she teaches graduate classes in new product development, brand strategy, and sustainable marketing. Welcome, Renee. Lovely to have you.
Hi, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
So we'd love for you to introduce yourself. I got the 2 sentences, but I'd love to hear about your catalytic journey. Maybe you can share a couple of highlights that you're proud of that help us see your catalytic nature.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you introduced, I currently lead sustainability at IFF, but really, I am not a sustainability professional by training or by nature. I kind of fell into it in my journey along the way. I've been really fortunate for the last 10 to 12 years that I've been involved in businesses that are very much about products and innovation in kind of the sustainability space. And I have said for that 10 to 12 years, I felt very, very fortunate because I came up through a sales, marketing, business management track in my career. But the sustainability piece, I'm personally very passionate about it and the environment and social aspects. And so one of the light bulb moments that I had, and I'll share with you what business that was in, was when I went, oh my gosh, I could actually have my personal passion and my professional passion merge, and I get to do what I love every day. And so that's, something that we all are looking for, right? So as I said, I kind of came up through, I started my career in sales, field sales. And so, once a sales rep, always a sales rep. And I continue to, knock on people's doors about, can you invite me to that customer conversation? And, they roll their eyes, but, at this point, they kind of like, bring me along and I hope I can add some value to the conversation. I think, as we're talking about, what are some of your career highlights, that kind of demonstrate your catalytic nature. I think, early in my career, so my first sales role, I was in a business that we sold pool and spa chemicals. And it's like as simple as that. I was working for a chemical company and we were thinking about how do we do it in a way that's a bit more friendly to people. And at that point in time, this is 20 some years ago, it wasn't about friendly to nature, but if I look back on it, it actually did have an environmental component to it. And so I was in sales for a number of years, but then I went in, became a product manager and a brand and marketing manager. And we were about to launch a new line of spa hot tub chemicals. And I just looked at kind of, what we now call like the sea of sameness, and everything was, just blue and white. And I just said, oh my gosh, there's got to be a different way and a different way to think about this, to make it, to make it either more beautiful or more appealing and kind of break out of that sea of sameness. And so it was really, for me, it was about giving them a brand, a personality, taking some of my marketing skills and turning that into doing something that was really, different. And so what we did is, because they were friendlier to humans, we did this beautiful photo shoot of people's body parts. And just, and people, my boss was like, well, what does this have to do with sanitizing pool and spa chemicals? Like probably nothing. It has nothing to do with the sanitization. It has to do about how people feel and the emotional connection that they have to the product we're selling. And from there, we went on and, created a bunch of other offshoots of that. And, I did one that was very retro, 1950s, Palm Springy kind of mid-century modern. And it was just like a playful, different way of thinking about a chemical. And it really was a chemical. So that was, maybe the first time at least in my career, that I was like, I don't know, like, okay, to me, this is obvious that we should do something different here, but it took a little bit of nudging to get people to go along. And then maybe the kind of fast forward many, many, many years, and my first foray into, oh my gosh, sustainability is really my calling and where I can plant my career, was in a role that we had basically, it was when I was working in DuPont, and we were making a product that was an omega-3 product. And omega-3s can be used for human health, but they also are really important components in feed for salmon and salmon aquaculture and farming salmon. And so we knew that we had a product there that we wanted to sell. And so we decided to partner. We weren't, of course, raising salmon ourselves at DuPont, but we decided to partner with a salmon farmer in Chile and thinking about how do you feed the salmon differently and have a sustainability value proposition. So normally you use wild caught feeder fish and you feed the salmon with those, and it's not a very sustainable practice. So by virtue of the product that we had, we could do it more sustainably. But that wasn't really the catalytic part. That was kind of that's the path we're going to go. We're going to sell a product part. Maybe it was a little bit different because we were doing something in kind of the food space and the aquaculture space. But where I think, I showed up in a different space there was when I said, well, look, if we're going to kind of walk into selling salmon and branding salmon, so that was really unique and different. How do we actually raise this fish in a really different way? Are there practices on the farm, the salmon farm? How are people treating these fish? How are people raising them, and antibiotic use and density of pens? And just, so we went out and we had a discussion with the with WWF, the World Wildlife Foundation, like how are people farming salmon and what are the negatives to that? So it wasn't just about creating one product, it was creating this whole entire story and structure and way of doing salmon farming that was completely different than what had been done before. And so we were wildly successful in creating that space and doing that. So those are, I guess, and I probably could go on, but you want me to talk about other things too. But those were, I think I look at, those two things, and as we, we're talking and reading your book, at the time, I didn't think that those were anything more than those are cool ideas. But reading your book now, I'm like, oh, maybe that's the catalytic nature in me, right?
100%. Okay, but I'm curious. You said there was a light bulb moment when I realized that I could bring my professional and my passion together. Was that one of the roles that you just outlined? What was that role?
Yeah, it was this aquaculture role when I was doing something different, entirely different in DuPont at that point in time. And I was ready for a different role. And I saw this, and it had this whole sustainability and food systems and food security and oceans and all of that. And that was the light bulb moment. And I thought, I am going to do everything I can do to get this job because I care so deeply about these things personally. Yeah. And I know that if I could do that, like in a 70 or 80-hour work week, it'll be amazing. And it really was.
Thank you. And I also love that you shared the early stage one, because we might not even know what our passion is with a capital P or capital purpose, right? When we're in our earlier stage career. But what's fascinating is how catalysts will still be catalysts in those roles. You're like, I'm gonna revitalize this industry by doing this amazing marketing and talking about how people feel about it and just bringing that totally outside in, off the wall thinking. So thanks for sharing that. I'm wondering too, like in all of that, how do you think that, well, let me start with, how do you think that how do you define being a catalyst? Like we heard some of the traits there, the outside thinking, the passion, the purpose, the bringing people along, but how do you personally relate to the concept of catalyst?
I mean, I think, and again, you did this so beautifully in your book, and when I read it, I was just like, oh my gosh, like somebody gets it. I just think that I am able to look at things, connect the dots, quickly drive in the direction that I think will enable success and something that will, drive a better solution or a future state. Yeah, I mean, we talked about, when you and I spoke previously, Shannon, I said to you, I'm just Renee. Like, this is not, and maybe we all feel that way. And I'm like, I'm just Renee. Like, this is not unique. This is different. It's the way I work. And I don't think it's special. I don't think it's unique. Everybody has their way of working. But that is something that I've just always been able to do, good and bad, right? And again, you've pointed it out, like, maybe we all sit back and say, well, why can't you see the same thing I see, or catch up? Like, catch up. Why is it taking you so long to catch up to me with this? And I'm frustrated because can't you see how this is going to be successful? And you're throwing all of these like landmines in my way, and I just want to do it. Right? So, yeah.
Uh-huh.
I mean, yeah. And I've been really, really fortunate that I have had networks around me and mentors and bosses who have allowed me to bring some of these things to light. Now, some of that is through trial and error, and you have to build up that credibility to have people around you, for the most part, allow you to take things that they may deem as riskier, right? So, but I've been very fortunate in many of the moments that I would describe as catalytic, that I have had the support of the organization around me.
And also just in how you opened it, like what I hear there, and a lot of hard work and elbow grease. It's not like you're just expecting the mentors for things to drop in your lap or the trust to be built. It's like, absolutely, I'm going to work a lot of hours to make this thing a reality.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, so right now, I've been in this CSO role for a year. And one of the big things that I have been trying to drive is that I call it sustainability with a capital S. And that many times, many companies, when you look at sustainability as a corporate function, it is very internally focused, as a lot of it needs to be from a compliance and a regulatory standpoint, and you need to do the right thing as a company. But I'm also looking at it as a competitive advantage for all the things that we do within our innovation space, products, customers, and trying to really drive us as a market back, understanding what our customers need, what our business units need, and then dialing that into the corporate thinking. And that's been, and I'm still doing it, it's been a year-long process to align my current team, the overall businesses, to what that means, what that looks like, and absolutely building the credibility that I need to make that shift within the organization. Because the first 3 weeks or 4 weeks when I was like, let me go see customers, they're like, who are you? Go put the right light bulbs in the, put the LED lights in and go save energy that way. And I'm like, that's not what we're going to be about. So again, it takes that time to build that. And it really is about doing and showing rather than just talking.
Hopefully more and more people are recognizing the actual meaningful impact that you're going to bring to the organization with that lens. And as I pivot to the next question, you've already outlined a couple of things. The question is around how has being a catalyst supported your executive journey, essentially? And I hear you saying it's like, you're doing the dot connecting, you're doing the person connecting and establishing, the credibility and bringing people along. But what would you say in terms of how being a catalyst has supported your journey?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's absolutely it. I mean, and you know, as you both know, when you get it right, you get it right, and you're a rock star for a day or a week. But there's a lot of not getting it right along the way too, and I think that is almost as important or more important than the getting it right is how you show up in those moments that things aren't going well, and you know, what is your fortitude, what is your character, how do you manage those things, being somebody who just wants to go and move and and go on, move on to the next thing, you know, as you grow in an organization, and particularly as you're leading teams and people, you need to have that, whether you call it EQ or, you know, leadership style, to be able to step back and look at the things that haven't ended up in rock star moments, and be able to frame those up, use them as learning experiences, use them maybe as a springboard or a trajectory to the next space. And maybe that leads into a little bit of the discussion. Again, you write about it so well in your book about catalysts needing to, there's mindfulness, but there's also empathy. And to me, that is such a critical part of my journey in, you know, to more executive roles, is that understanding people and that empathy part with a lens towards how can I be overwhelming to people and how do I need to manage that?
Oh, yes. We need to double click on that, because how you show up when it's not going well and how we can be overwhelming for others. It's easy to say those words, right? And we can even see as catalysts why that's important. But like, how do you do that? And maybe how do you model that for other people in your organization?
The not overwhelming piece, or the
Well, both. I mean, like, I mean, overwhelming piece is the way that we might fail and alienate. But you sort of started with, you know, like when it's not going well or we're not the rock star, how do we show up in those moments? Is the credibility, is that, you know, we're not scaring people more maybe in those moments.
Yeah, I mean, again, some of it comes with perspective and age and those types of things, the things probably, you know, that I would have gotten completely worked up about at, you know, 25 and even 35, you know, at this point in my career, I'm like, you know, let's just take a beat here, think about it, put it in perspective, and try to be the voice of calm when there's all the chaos going on around you. Because even when you're working with people who aren't necessarily catalyst, there's a lot of, many times in people's mind and lives, there is chaos and there is drama. And, I think being a catalyst is also an opportunity to channel some of that. I can see things, I can see the pieces, I can see where this is going and not going, and try and bring a level of deep breathe and calmness to people who can't necessarily do that and kind of pull that together. So I think, and I'm not sure, if you'd both agree, but I think, using Catalyst in a way that channels some of that calm and perspective, and being able to see things, not always just like big blue ocean thinking, but like, what does the organization need right now? And what is the people piece of this need right now?
Yeah. That it's so true, and especially because there's so much swirl just in the world right now, and that as the change leaders, us adding to that with our too muchness or too fastness or whatever can really derail the efforts of change that we really want to realize in the world. I'm wondering though, like, this is a personal hot take, and I'm wondering how it plays out with you, because the times that I have the hardest time is when I'm so passionate about the thing. And this is the double-edged sword of getting to, embody your passion and purpose in the world in your job. And so it's like, if the world is really going to be better and if we're moving the needle forward and it doesn't work out that way, or like we're overwhelming people on that process, the regulation, for me anyway, can be harder. Is that something that you grapple with, or are you just like, I just have the skills now and I can apply them across the board?
No, I mean, I have more skills than I did, 20 years ago in my career, but no, I mean, and I still feel that sense of frustration, but there is, I don't want to say always, but almost always another way of going at the problem or the idea. And so, yeah, here's the linear path. I can see A to F. I can see it, and that's how I want to go. But it may be I have to go from A to T to Y back to F because of organizational roadblocks or people challenges. I still want to get to F, but I realize that there are probably a couple different ways, and some of them are faster and some of them are slower. But I mean, I think unless it's something, completely antithetical to what the organization wants to do or believes in, I think you can get there, but it's just understanding if there is a different path that you have to take to get there.
Such good advice.
But it's frustrating. It is frustrating. But it is also, I found too, when I started managing people and needed to put my big girl hat on as a manager, like I can't completely go off the rails and be like, this isn't working for me. So when you need to model, and I think that was part of your question, when you need to model things like, for those of us who are parents, you're like, okay, yes, sometimes you just need your kids to see the real, I just need to go off the rails. But you need to kind of model that and temper that and say, okay, well, let me model patience, let me model empathy. It's the same when you have a team of people. And as much as I may want to just kind of like, push the door open and, be a troublemaker or be a, whatever, you kind of have to model that for your team. So I think there's a balance of it to show them that you want to do these things and that you're frustrated alongside of them. But how do we take a step back, and what are some alternatives, and also think about why those roadblocks are there, whether it's a person or an organizational challenge.
Can I ask one more question, Tracy, before I take it over?
Because
I'm super curious. So we got the sneak peek about some of the stuff that you do outside of work, but like, are there activities or skills or ways that the muscles that you've developed to handle that frustration and pivot back into the mindfulness, the empathy, the calmness?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you talked about it in your book about, whatever people think about, whether, mindfulness, or you talk about getting into nature. And those are all things. I mean, I've always been very, very avid hiker, skier, runner. I love to exercise, and if it can be outside, 100%, I'd rather be outside. So that to me has always been a really important stress management tool, as well as, particularly if I can go hiking, I love this feeling. It really happens within the first, call it 5 minutes of being in nature. I feel like a deep breath, shoulders down, just everything. And people find their different way. Mine is hiking or skiing. People find their different way. So I do that. I do yoga. Probably not as much as I should, but I do. I find that calmness there. And then also, again, I think hopefully, I think we all have different mechanisms. I try as much as possible to put up, I don't know how you would term it. I've always called it guardrails, right? Like I block time in my calendar because I have to get work done. Or now, since the pandemic and we've been working from home a lot, I do actually block time in the morning. Like this is my exercise or meditation or yoga time. Because I need that, because go, because we can, but it doesn't mean we should.
Amen.
Yeah. And I do absolutely, again, that part of it is a pact I made with my husband many years ago. Part of it is trying to model for my team. I will disconnect. Like when if you need to reach me for an emergency, fine, but I am not checking email when I'm on vacation this week. And my husband said, part of the reason we go hiking in these remote locations is like, I'm so sorry, I can't get a cell signal. Like, I love it. It's great.
I had to train my husband when we would come back from rock climbing or backpacking things. I was like, because as soon as like the bars hit, he'd be like on his phone because he's an entrepreneur, he's a CEO and all that stuff. I was like, babe, nobody else in the world knows that you just got signal. So you can even wait the whole drive home.
You're okay.
You're okay.
I love it. I'm not one of these people who freaked out if I don't have a signal. I mean, if something's really important going on, yes, but I'm kind of like, oh, too bad the Wi-Fi on the plane's not working. Okay.
I understand that. That is, yes. So much beautiful wisdom to share with fellow executives in your journey. Thank you so much. And I'm curious, what are some of the biggest challenges as an executive, especially as a catalytic executive, you have faced?
Yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit about it, already, Tracy. I mean, some of it is organizational resistance to change, and that's just thematic for organizations, period, and people, period. But I think when you have people like us who are catalysts, and I've heard myself and others like us described as they can just suck the oxygen out of the room. It's tough, right? Because, even if you're trying to affect a small change, it's tough. But then you're like, well, why are we trying to do like this little bitty incremental change? If we're going to change, let's go in and do it and break shit. Right? Let's just break shit. Like,
Mm-hmm.
let's not see of sameness. So that's really tough. And I've worked in organizations, and I'm married to a scientist. So I'm going to say this. And my background is I have a science degree, but I've worked in organizations with scientists and engineers for my whole career. And that also happens to be a generalizing, but it's a mindset who isn't as open to risk taking and change
Sure.
as, you walk into an ad agency and they're like, oh, I'll change every day. So organizational resistance to change, I think, has been one of the challenges, and again, where I think I've been most effective is trying to understand why are people resistant to that, what's going on, because we're all creatures of emotion. What's going on emotionally with them that's causing that, and is it a good enough idea to really put the effort and energy in towards, because the boy who cried wolf or the girl who cried wolf, if everything's important, nothing's important. So let's make sure that we fight for the right things and then we don't tilt at windmills. The other thing too, particularly as I'm kind of now in the sustainability role, is keeping up with these constant market shifts, whether it's customer dynamics, consumer dynamics, or in the field of sustainability. It is moving and advancing so quickly that keeping up with it is a huge challenge for myself and my team. So trying to figure out, again, like, what do we need to focus on? What are the moments that really matter, and where can we kind of lay back on some things and take a deep breath and let those just sit alongside?
You've actually hit on two of the biggest topics that Shannon and I are thinking about right now, which is kind of crazy and awesome, honestly. And so I'd love to deep dive a little bit into each of them. And so, when we start with organizational resistance, I hear you say thinking about, what's going on? Is it a good enough idea? But I'd really appreciate it if you could bring us in. Like, what are the steps to really help be with organizational resistance? And I would imagine being in sustainability, it's not like, one, you're a catalyst, you're going to hit, organizational resistance, but sustainability is a topic, like you said, go change the light bulbs. They can have a special kind of resistance that will rise up.
Yeah.
What have you learned, like really, like tactically?
So yeah, it's a super question. And again, I think I've been really fortunate in the organizations that I've worked in and come up through, is that they've been there was always been scientific based organizations. So there's data, there's fact. And so it is a group of people who are like, well, show me the data, show me the fact, and very customer facing. What are the customer needs? So, when you have data and customer driven needs on your side, it becomes a lot easier to make your case about change, because if you're changing just for change's sake, then that's not the right reason to change. That's one of the ones that you should just be like, cute idea, but okay, we're not going to go there. But the data is telling me that I need to make a change in a product line. Mm-hmm. Or the customer is, I've got 16 CPG customers who are all asking for shades of this, this idea. So it becomes easier to say, maybe not what that change is, but we need to make a change. So let's kind of like balance it out here and say, let's all agree, we hear this is what the data or the science or the customers are telling us. Put our hands on the table. We need to make a change, right? Yes. Okay. So once we get there, then you have to manage the ideas and figure out, okay, well, then what are the ideas to get us there? Some are bigger, some are smaller. But that, to me, that's been really, that has worked in my favor, is to just rely on the data and fact and get everybody to say, yeah, I see it. Let's go.
I love that. And so as a first step in, kind of meeting organizational resistance is getting people on the same page of acknowledging there's a need for change. So rather than selling them on a sustainability solution, for example,
right,
it's okay, no, let's back up.
Right.
What's happening with our customer base?
Right.
And let's talk about that.
Right.
And have you learned anything at that moment, right? Those moments that are particularly helpful? Because I'm tying to hearing you, the word empathy has come up a lot in this conversation. And so I'm imagining it's not a presentation of like, here's the data, right? So tie to me, for me, kind of this notion of empathy and meeting people where they're at with data and customer needs.
Yeah, I mean, and so within my current organization, we have 4 pretty different and distinct business units. So I have 4 different internal, business unit stakeholders, if you will. And so, yeah, there are some commonalities. So there's commonalities of customer and business unit needs. But there's still a lot more differences. And then you layer in the personality differences. So it's just, I spend my day on the phone talking to people, whether it's my team, other teams, and in this particular case that we're talking about is, what we've identified the needs. I probably have 15 different possible solutions in my mind, but I need people to come to the table with their solutions before I offer mine. And that is a leadership trait, a management trait, maybe a catalyst coping mechanism as well.
Yeah.
So me, as you said, like me just saying, and here are all the sustainability solutions we should be thinking about. It's what we've all seen. We've all acknowledged that there is a need for change. We're all looking at the same data. What do you think? How do you think we should manage this? Because, people need to see themselves, most people, not all people, but most people need to see themselves in the solution or the change or the go forward actions in order to really fully buy into it. Sometimes you'll get blank stares, and uncomfortable silence. And if that goes on long enough, then you can say, well, here are some considerations. Here are some things I've thought about. What do you think about that? But it's still to be as much as you can, let's go together, bring you along with my idea, your idea, however. And again, I don't know that that's catalytic versus just good management and leadership. But because as catalysts, you can overwhelm people if you just jump in with that idea. People may come to that idea anyway, and that's great. And let's give them credit for the idea. Like, I don't need credit for the idea. I really don't need credit for the idea. I want my team to have credit. I want people who are running the project or the programs to have credit. Let's just get it done.
Yeah. No, I love where you brought us that. I think that true listening, that true openness it takes time to develop.
It absolutely, I was on a call this morning and I said to my team, I am going to break a rule. I'm going to give you a proposed solution before I ask you, but I just felt the need. Like I had so many things in my mind that I had not said, that I had held back. I'm like, I just have to let this little one out.
Yeah, there's still the catalyst in you. Sometimes it's still coming through.
Absolutely, right? You can't, in some ways, there's a balance too, right? Because as as executives and as leaders, people do look to you for guidance and solutions and ideas. So as much as I think a lot of an executive or a leader or whatever you want to characterize role is finding the right people and elevating their ideas and getting the great ideas out of your people. I don't have great ideas. My people have great ideas, and my superpower is finding the great people and the great ideas that they have, not mine. But people do also look to us. I look to my boss every once in a while. I'm like, I don't have a solution. What's your idea?
Right. And talk to me about that second one, keeping up with market shifts. How do we do that, Renee?
Sometimes not really well. Well, I mean, it's again, in the sustainability space, it's just been moving and new regulations, and you've got things that are happening in Europe and California, and it's just, all of us are in fields that are just moving at lightning speed for lots of different reasons. And I mean, for that, to me, it is around prioritization, making sure that we understand what's important to the organization. Not what's important to me, but what's important to the organization. I mean, I work for a for-profit company. I don't, at this point in my life, work for a nonprofit. So I have to keep organizational goals in front of me. So anyway, so it is prioritization, and the market's shifting around you, and it's counterintuitive to having a good business plan to be shifting your strategy and your plan and every 2 or 3 months. We'd like to have a little bit more time and runway around that, but it does mean that you have to be aware. You have to, and I think, I'm fortunate that my team, and just by nature myself, is we like information. We like to know what's going on in the world. We don't live in a vacuum. We do collect all of this, and whether we can act on it or not, we're at least aware of it.
Yeah.
We're very aware of it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Shannon and I did a report a few years back with our Catalyst Leadership Trust, looking at what has changed in thinking about strategy and in strategic planning, especially in the wake of COVID, and as the pace of disruption is amplifying in our businesses. And so I like your framing of, in an ideal world, we're not changing the strategy every 2 to 3 months, but you do need to be keeping up on the shifts and considering, do I need to change the strategy? It's not ideal to, but maybe I need to.
I mean, and hopefully, in strategy, one is an iterative process. So it is necessary to change it. Not every 2 to 3 months, but to change it. And its strategy is a series of decisions. It's what we're going to do, and more importantly, what we're not going to do. Mm-hmm. But it's not going to do ever. It's just not going to do now. Mm-hmm. So hopefully you have a strategy that's broad enough and high level enough that you can capture movements and shifts and market dynamics. So you don't have to change the strategy, but maybe that's the plan or the execution elements or the resources or prioritization or whatever. But okay, so things happen, and so you do have to shift and change the strategy. Fine, but again, hopefully you've built enough resiliency within the organization, or you again are sufficiently that you build enough resiliency in the organization that the organization can withstand shifting a strategy with the shifting dynamics.
One hopes.
It's such great advice, and it's exactly the reason that we do this, is getting real about the challenges that face Catalyst, and hopefully learning from our shared wisdom so that up and coming Catalyst can make new and different mistakes. I'm wondering if you have some favorite inspirational catalysts that have been high points for you, past or present.
Yeah, the one that does come to mind, and it's probably the world that I live in personally and professionally, is I think about the founder of Patagonia, Yvon Chouinard, and he's probably a lot of us may love him and what he's done, and if you know his story about, basically, and these are not my words. These are actually, I think, Rick Ridgway, who used to work for Patagonia alongside Yvonne. I heard him speak once, and I think it was him. But anyway, somebody said that, you're either a company you're a company who then has a mission, or you're a mission and you created a company. A lot of it is either in the sustainability or the social responsibility space. And so I love these stories about people like Yvonne, who was, and
rock
kind
climber.
of probably Shannon. He was a climber, right?
Yep.
He's this climber, and he's like, the things that I'm putting into the rocks and the clips, and like, it's not sufficient. I'm going to go make my own in a shed out back, type of thing. And that's how that company started. But the ethos of giving back the environment, making sure that we have planet and people, forefront and first in our mind, has continued as a thread through that company. And I feel very fortunate. One of the roles I was in bio-based materials, and we did bio textiles. So I did have an opportunity to work a bit with Patagonia. And, that ethos just permeates through the company to the point where, I think it was a couple of years ago, they came out, and Yvonne said, I'm going to get this wrong, but he basically said, the profits that this company makes are going to go into a trust for the environment, going forward. It's not going to go to investment groups. And so, again, it's just that living that principle, and, the ideas and just the forward thinking that he had and many people around him had, to me, has always been really cool, super inspirational.
I so totally agree. And like and the way that he built it inside and out, like every ounce of the DNA of that company's existence is built like that. It makes me a little teary,
I don't know
actually.
if they still, I don't know if they still, I used to get the Patagonia catalog and hoard it, because it was stories. They're storytellers. Totally. There's a great, it's Rick Ridgway. He talks about storytelling, and I use it in class as an example of great storytelling. And, oh, by the way, they show a Patagonia product, but it's all about the environment and why they do what they do. And I show it every semester, and every semester I'm like, get chills watching it, just because it's just so fantastic. And when I had an opportunity to go to the Patagonia headquarters and go and call on, I was like a 9-year-old. I'm like, oh my God, that's so great. So.
Okay, there's another thing that you've done that's on my bucket list too, Renee. So yeah.
Well, we'll have to find a way. We'll have to make a field trip there. It's a really neat space.
Let's do that. Renee, this has been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, thank you
grateful.
so much. Well, thank you for doing what you do in writing your book and having this podcast and giving people like us a home and a name to kind of, center in on. And again, in reading your book, I'm like, yes. Oh my gosh, somebody gets it.
Well, we feel seen by you too. So thank you. And
Thank you.
To our listening audience, thank you so much for being on this journey with us. If you'd like to know more about how to create bold, powerful change in the world, make sure to check out our book, Move Fast, Break Shit, Burnout, the one that Renee was just talking about. Or of course, you can go to our website at catalystconstellations.com.
And if you enjoyed this episode the way Shannon and I very much did, please take a few seconds to rate it on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you have other catalysts in your life, hit the share button and send a link their way.